I've been asked by several of you whether I grow a particular rose, and of course the answer to that question is usually yes. This particular one is Mortimer Sakler, a climbing rose introduced by David Austin Roses in 2002, and a real delight here in the garden. So if you have a small space, if you have a high traffic area, if you have somewhere you'd like to put a climbing rose that you don't want to get completely out of hand and you don't want to get tangled up in and bitten by, Mortimer Sakler should be something that you look at. I have it here growing on a 12-foot by 6-foot trellis, and you can see that it has really very attractive pink blooms. They're fairly small for a David Austin rose. They're fairly small. They're around 2.5 inches across, and they have this lovely sort of star-shaped quality to them, almost sort of jumping forward at you. The petals having a very tiny pointed edge to the outside edges of them all. A really nice, true, strong pink colour. Which is very pleasant. The nicest thing about this particular rose is it not only grows very well in fairly dark shade, but it also is virtually thornless, which means it is an absolute joy. Long arching stems are produced in this very odd colour for a rose. They're kind of grey brown. I know that sounds quite horrible, but that combined with its dark green foliage and its very strong true pink flowers is a really lovely combination. And you can see, I mean, this was hanging like this, so as it goes up and up, reaching eventually around 12 feet in size, so it's fairly manageable, but obviously fairly vigorous. For the most people's small domestic gardens would go great on a fence or an arch or a pergola, or even if you wanted to train it up a house, it's not going to completely engulf you. So reaching around 12 feet in height, so as it goes up above sort of 6 and 8 feet, the blooms hang down like this, which is really very pleasant because you're looking up at that lovely star-shaped in the centre. Another nice thing about this particular rose, getting down to the very fine details, is the bud shape. They're really nice and pointed, and I've spoken to you about several times about that lovely little flick off the top just before they open, which is a characteristic I think is really very pleasant, looking at the two forms and textures together. There is actually a really good fragrance off this rose as well, a strong old English fragrance with hints of fruit. So you're talking about mirth and lime, citrus like lemon and oranges. It really is very pleasant. But I say the best thing about this particular rose is, one, it's thornless, and secondly, it's that combination, all of those factors together, that strong pink colour, the grey arching stems without the thorns, and the dark green foliage all together make it a really handsome rose. The flowering season on this is not particularly great. It has 2 succession of blooms, so one normally in about late June. Mine is flowering its away now, and it will then have a spatter of blooms probably in around late July to the beginning of August. Nothing quite like its first show. So if you are planting this and you want it to work really hard, I would suggest you plant it with a companion plant, something like a clematis, reaching the same sort of size, which is not going to engulf it. And again, that's quite a nice combination. You can either do a similar colour or plant it with something completely different, like a strong purple, which will give you a two-toned effect to your display. But the repeat is not amazing on it. But this is Mortimer Sakler from David Austin Roses, a completely thornless, very elegant rose with a great colour combination between flower, stem and leaves.